You can either save 50,000 using old tax regime or you can lose your 15,000 rupees using new tax regime. But what is this tax regime? How do you know which to choose for? All about this in this video. Tax regime defines how much tax you have to pay for different tax slabs. Your income is defined into different ranges like 0 to 5 lakh, 5 to 10 lakh, and this taxes is applied on this different tax slabs. And each tax slab has its own tax rate, like 0 to 5 lakh will be having 10% tax, 5 to 10 lakh will be having 20% tax, and so on. Suppose your income is 4 lakh and this comes under the tax slab of 0 to 5 lakh, so you have to pay a tax of 10%. In 2020, our government introduced new tax regime which has more tax saving options and more tax rates. And after 2020, you have the option to select new tax regime or old tax regime, making the taxation all the more complicated. There are few things as a taxpayer must consider before you choose between the old tax regime and the new tax regime. In the new tax regime, there are more tax slabs with lower tax rates. But here's the catch. All exemptions and deductions available to a taxpayer is not available in new tax regime. Thus, you can't file for any exemption or deduction while you opt for the new tax regime. So if the advantage of lower tax rates outruns the benefits of your exemption and deductions, then choosing this new tax regime is beneficial for you. While the new tax regime offers zero exemption and deduction for you, the old tax regime has over 70 deductions and exemptions for you to claim for. While deciding between old and new tax regime, you have to analyze the pros and cons between both of them and choose your decision wisely. So coming back to the question, why is this new tax regime introduced in the first place? It has been observed that the younger population who do not have any tax saving investments wants lower tax rates. Nowadays, taxpayers are opting for new tax regime as they don't want to invest their fund under section 80C, which has a lock-in period. These taxpayers actually invest their money in FDs rather than investing their money in assets which has a lock-in period of 3 to 5 years. So the next question will be, can we switch between the new tax regime and the old tax regime as many times as we can? Is it possible? Individuals with income under the head salary, house property, capital gains and other incomes can switch between the new tax regime and old tax regime every year. If you want to know the various income an individual can get, you can check out on the video on the I button here. But the individuals under the income head of business and profession can get only one chance to switch back to old tax regime once they switch over to the new tax regime. This means they can choose the new tax regime only once in their lifetime. Alright, before we go into tax calculation in detail, let's understand a term called cess. Cess is a form of tax which is levied by the government on the tax for specific purposes till the government gets money for that purpose. This cess is imposed as an additional tax besides the tax which you are paying. Cess at the rate of 4% is imposed on the tax for an individual who is earning 50 lakhs and below. If your taxable income is above 50 lakh, your cess charges will vary accordingly. There are various types of cess levied by the government. Education cess, collected by the government to provide the mandatory free standard primary education to all citizens. Health cess, proposed in 2018 by former minister to meet the health requirements of below poverty line families. Road cess or fuel cess, for maintenance of roads and infrastructure. Clean energy cess, introduced in 2010, it is a carbon tax on the production and import of coal, lignite and peat, operating on the polluter pays principle. Krishi Kalyan cess, it was introduced in 2016 to provide additional support to farmers for agriculture activities. Swachh Bharat cess, introduced in 2014 with the objective of delivering a clean India and to fund Swachh Bharat initiatives. Alright, let's look at an example of how to calculate your taxable income and which tax regime will be better for you. Alright, so this is a new tax regime and the old tax regime, so you can compare. As you can see from here, from 5 lakh to 7.5 lakh, if you can see, the new tax regime has only 10%, while the old tax regime gives you 20%. And above 15 lakhs, it's a no say actually. Suppose your income is like 30 lakh, 40 lakh, then you have to give a tax of 30%. So the advantage of new tax regime here is, if your income level is below a 10 lakh limit or a 12.5 lakh limit, the tax percentage is very less compared to the old tax regime. If you can see from here, there is a 5% decrement in the new tax regime compared to the old tax regime. Alright, so I'll be sharing this Excel with you. You can see the link in the description. Before I go to the tax calculation, there's a tab for links. So this is a videos which is presently there in my channel, that is all about tax. You can go through the channel or click the links here to watch these videos. I highly recommend that you watch all these videos to get a good understanding of what we'll be talking further down the line in this video, because these are the basic building blocks. By watching these videos, your basic fundamentals about tax will be a little more solidified and you'll understand the terms a bit more better, and you can relate all the terms which I'll be talking about. Alright, so coming back to the tax calculation, as you can see, we have exemptions and deductions on the left side. If you are a salaried employee, these are the exemptions which you can get, and deductions is here down the line. So all these deductions is applicable for any person who has an income and who is a resident of India. So coming back to the tax calculation, so I have taken an income of, let's say, 10 lakh for a person. So the gross income is actually the total income. If you haven't watched the video about gross income, taxable income, you can check out the link on the I button here. Alright, so coming back to the tax calculation, as you can see, if you are opting for the old tax regime, you can see there's a standard deduction of 50,000, and if your company is giving you food coupons, that is up to 25,000, you can claim that. And under section 80C, if you have any home loans or any investment schemes which has a lock-in period, you can claim that as well. So suppose this person in this scenario has all these exemptions and deductions which he can claim. Suppose he can claim 1.25 lakh for 80C, 25,000 for medical health insurance, and 25,000 for home loan, and so on, and the exemptions. So coming to the taxable income, so his taxable income will be reduced to 7.5 lakh, whereas the new tax regime doesn't allow any deductions or exemptions. So his taxable income will be 10 lakhs. So according to new tax regime, you have 10 lakhs, and according to the old tax regime, you have 7.5 lakh. Let's see how the tax will be calculated. Alright. Coming to the tax calculation, so if you can see from the right side, if you scroll a little bit, I have just hidden out because it's a kind of a distraction, right? Alright, coming to the tax calculation, if you can see here, according to the old tax regime, you have a 7.5 lakh of taxable income. According to new tax regime, you have 10 lakh. From the tax regime policies, 2.5 lakh to 5 lakh is 5%, that is 12,500. 5 lakh to 7.5 lakh is 50,000. So you have a tax liability of 50,000 plus 12,500, that is 62,500. And remember, you have to pay a cess charge, that is a tax upon the tax liability which you are paying. So that comes to 4% of 62,500, that is 2,500. So overall your tax outgoing is 65,000. Alright, coming to the new tax regime, you have 10 lakhs of taxable income, upon which 2.5 to 5 lakh is 5%, that is 12,500. 5 to 7.5 lakh is at 10%, that is 25,000, and 7.5 lakh to 10 lakh is at 15%, that is 37,500. So overall your tax will come up to 75,000. So remember, you have to add the cess charge as well at 4%. 4% of 75,000 is coming around 3,000 rupees. So your overall tax is coming around 78,000. So from here you can see, if you have a gross income of 10 lakhs, when you opt for the old tax regime and Remember, you should have reductions and exemptions accordingly. Then you are saving a tax of 13,000 if you opt for old tax regime. And remember, from the gross income of 10 lakhs, you have a exemption and deductions of 2.5 lakh. Normally, a person having an income of 10 lakhs will be having one or the other exemptions where he can claim. Remember, HRA, house rent allowance is also an exemption, food coupon is also an exemption, and so on. Alright, this concludes the differentiation and the explanation of old tax regime and new tax regime. You can view this Excel which is there in the description below, and you can put on your values here and calculate your tax liability so that you will be better off to choose which tax regime you have to choose for. You can either choose old and new. Choose wisely, and by this calculation you can see which tax regime is better suitable for you. If you have any questions or queries for what we have learned till now, let me know in the comments below. I hope you have found this video useful. Give a like if you like this video, and don't forget to subscribe to stay tuned with the upcoming videos, and share it with your friends who would like to know more about taxation in India. I'll catch you up in the next video.